We have a scary situation in Ukraine and Russia. This thing is a huge conflict, but like you said, the more dangerous conflict, the one that's more likely to nuclear that we've both agreed on multiple, talked about this multiple times, is Israel and the conflict with Gaza and now Iran. I've just been it's been 2 weeks now since Ismail Haniyeh was assassinated in Tehran. And I have anxiety every morning. I wake up and look at the news and see has it
Hmm.
happened. I imagine the anxiety in Israel has to be just fever pitch. Maybe are you able to talk about what's happening in Israeli society now? Are we seeing an increased exodus? Are we seeing like capital outflows in terms of the how their economy is doing? I saw Fitch downgraded their credit rating. What is the current situation in Israel? And do you have any idea? Have a pulse on Israeli society right now?
Um, yeah, I don't have a whole lot to say, but yeah, clearly the Israeli economy has taken a huge beating, and that downgrading of the Fitch rating is just the most recent indicator of that, right? Um, there's it's more than, let's say, just a temporary downturn. Obviously there's been a huge blow to tourism, and tourism is an important industry in Israel. But that's something that can, let's say, if the war ends one day and then tourism can quickly return to the levels where it was beforehand. But I think more worrying for them is just um, the loss of investment. I think a lot of companies that were planning to invest heavily in Israel are now have chosen not to, and those decisions may turn out to be permanent. And say that Israel is not the kind of society that we thought it was. We assumed that it was just sort of an outpost of Europe, really, in the Middle East. I think that's the way a lot of people looked at it, and just as secure as France. Now, first of all, that illusion of security was shattered by October 7th, right? And everything that's followed. And then second, it's just the behavior of Israel too is forced a lot of people, except for those who are deliberately blind. And there are those people, some of them very important, like Elon Musk. But a lot of people are looking at Israel and realizing it's not the kind of society they thought it was. I mean, that there are crazy run amok. There are mobs that are pounding on prison doors to let rapists out of prison. They say this is shocking to anybody who really looks at it with open eyes. You say, is this really where we want to invest this $1 billion, or is this really the does their company really have a future there? Those are the kind of questions that are people asking themselves, and I think are answering in the negative, and that's going to have a permanent detrimental effect on the Israeli economy.
And to compound that, I believe the issue I think also is that a lot of the people that have fled are more secular Jews, probably a lot more of the high net worth Jews, Israelis, because the professors or people that run these tech enterprises, I imagine a lot of them are more secular and they don't have the same vision of these extremist settlers, for example. So as these people leave, these people that are against the genocide, do not agree with the Israeli state, or are aware of the dangers that Israel is currently in, continue to leave, it's going to create this problem of sort of an increased condensation of extremism. More and more of the people remaining are the ones that are saying we have to, see this through to the end. We got to make sure that this genocide is completed, that we
Yeah.
create the vision of greater Israel. And those few remaining voices, I imagine they're going to be pushed out. Like if I was a secular Jew living in Israel and seeing what's happening, I'd be like, okay, maybe it is time to go get out of here. Maybe I'm going to go back to Brooklyn or Poland or wherever. And the people that are left now you have much more radicalized. Let's say that the conflict ends. What is left of Israeli society now? It is the extremist society that is clearly in control now because you've
Right.
pushed out sort of the leftist, more secular, reasonable voices. Do you think
Right.
that's true?
Yeah.
Is that
Well, I think that's. I'm sure that's somewhat true. I haven't actually seen any. any polling data on the kind of people that are leaving. But I imagine that, they tend to be professionals and people, people that have two passports and tend to be more cosmopolitan, et cetera, right? Um, but as Max Blumenthal, I think, very rightly points out again and again, this kind of easy differentiation between the secular Jews and the religious Jews is not very meaningful. Because when you actually look at like support for the genocide, you find that it's very solid on both sides, and there are some kinds of, Orthodox Jews that are actually opposed or anti-Zionist, and then it's not such a black and white picture. It really isn't. Israeli society in general, all the political parties are behind the Gaza campaign. They're behind the genocide. I mean, that's the sorry truth. There isn't a group of secular uh, liberal Jews that of any significant number that oppose it. There, of course, there are individuals, like you said before, but it is something that you just find all across throughout Israeli society. I wouldn't be surprised. I fully expect that what you said about those that left, that they're probably people that are less committed to the Zionist project. I mean, if you're fully committed to the Zionist project, whether you're secular or not, and let's remember, the Zionist project and the Nakba, that was carried out entirely by secular Jews, right? Almost, yeah, entirely by secular Jews. Um, but you had very committed Zionists who are secular, and you still have them. And I think that's probably what it comes down to. There are a lot of committed Zionists, both religious and secular, that say it's my duty to stay here and fight it out to the end. And and I got to believe in we just have to win. We will, and if we have to kill them all, we'll do it. Yeah. But those that left are probably the ones again that are less committed to the Zionist project, and would probably be the more reasonable voices on the average, I would assume. Again, I'd like to see polling data on it, but that would be my guess.
Yeah, I mean, that makes sense. Okay, well, let's go talk about Iran a little bit. It's been 2 weeks now, over 2 weeks since the assassination of Ismail Haniyeh. So what's taking so long? Is it that Iran is still preparing for this offense, or is there potentially some type of backdoor diplomacy going on, and we can maybe potentially even avoid this whole conflict? What are your
Right.
thoughts?
I haven't heard rumors of any kind of backdoor diplomacy. I remember, like, prior to the April retaliation by Iran, there already were rumors that it was going on, and then later confirmed afterwards. But I haven't heard. What you hear again and again is the Iranians are saying again and telling different people that have come to try to persuade them, to hold back, to not to strike a blow in retaliation. They said we got to do it, and I haven't heard any signal from any kind of reliable source, any information. I haven't seen any information from any reliable source to indicate otherwise. I think that the Iranians are going to retaliate. Um, they've made that clear. If they don't, then they really do have a serious loss of credibility. I don't. I think they will. I think they understand that. I know they understand that. Um, but but it is a very prickly problem, right? They don't want to have an all-out war, but they need to retaliate in some significant way. So there must be debate about what to do exactly. I don't know what the answer to that is, and maybe part of it is that there's an ongoing debate, and they're weighing the pros and cons of different forms of retaliation. That's probably part of it. Then also it's in, they have to take into account the interests of different states in the region. It's just recently that they've achieved a kind of a modus vivendi with Saudi Arabia and the other Sunni states, and that's very important for them. They don't want to upend that. So they don't want to do something that will harm their relations with other Arab nations, and so they do have to actually take into account like what the effects of their retaliation would be, not just on Israel but on other states in the region. And then there's the military technical side of it. We mentioned like apparently the Russians have delivered a lot of air defense, electronic warfare equipment to Iran, and I assume that even if the Russians are going to be operating, it's going to take a little while to set all that up in a way that's really going to help them. They want to make sure because they know that whatever they do, it's almost near certainty that Israel will strike back, and they want to be able to defend themselves against that. So they don't want to be hasty. And then I've heard it pointed out that maybe actually delaying it doesn't really hurt them; it hurts Israel more because Israel, like you're saying, they're on tenterhooks over there, and like various airlines have already shut down flights until this is over, and so the longer it goes on, the more their economy suffers. The more they suffer psychologically, and the more likely that they'll be surprised. If there are a lot of false alarms, like you say, because I've heard probably at least 4 or 5 times over the last 2 weeks that they're likely to strike within the next 24 hours. Now, one of these times it's going to be true, but when that happens 4 or 5 times, then your guard gets let down. The first time you're up all night, whatever your position is, watching the screen or whatever, and then as it's a case of kind of never cry wolf, right? So when it
Right.
So maybe that's
Yeah.
partly what's going on.
Yeah,
I
that's
can see
true.
that
So
it
the
doesn't hurt them it hurts Israel more to drag this out for a certain length of time. Obviously they can't drag it out too long because then it
right.
ceases to be a meaningful retaliation. But if they strike in, the relatively near future, it'll be obvious that it was a retaliation for this, and yeah, it'll be a well-prepared retaliation, and Israel will only have suffered by waiting for it for an extra couple of weeks.
Right. Yeah, no, it does make sense to keep on waiting because, like you said, the psychological strain, the economic strain that's being placed on Israel are severe, and also the more time that they have, I think it gives more time for just for Iran to set up defenses. It doesn't really give an advantage to Israel to prepare. Like, there's not a
Right.
whole lot that I think Israel can do, and they're just waiting, and this just gives more and more. I just heard recently that I think it was this morning or yesterday that the Russia just said sent the largest or the largest cargo plane in the world is a Russian military cargo plane, and that just landed in Tehran last night. So it's clear that there's still a lot more going on, and so yeah, I think that that makes sense. It's just the longer they wait, the better for Iran, the worse for Israel. I also think that. Do you think there's a possibility that Israel during this time they're waiting that they might try to strike first, which will further condemn them in
Uh-huh.
international opinion and
Right.
in view. Like, look, they clearly can't
They're
wait because
they're
there's a lot of
completely out of
voices
control.
in
Right.
Israel. Right,
Right.
there are a lot of voices in Israel. It's like, why are we sitting around waiting for them to attack us? Why are we sitting around? Let's attack them now.
Right.
And do you think that's a possibility that Israel could even strike first
Oh, sure.
and before this
Well,
retaliation?
right. Right. Of course, that's what they did during the '67 war. Right. There was a period of tension,
Hmm.
and the tension grew and grew, and then Israel struck first. Um, so yeah, they could. There's no question about it, and I bet Iran knows that. And but the longer it drags out, the better prepared they will be for either a first strike, a preemptive strike by Israel, or a retaliatory strike. So either way, it seems to favor
Right.
Iran if they wait it out. And then they say, well, okay, Israel may do this, but again, it's only going to harm them more in the court of world opinion. So
Mm,
we'll give them a chance to do it, before we retaliate.
right. And in terms of you're talking about their Iran's being in a prickly situation and they have to really calibrate their response. But something you also mentioned is that no matter what Iran does, Israel is going to attack Iran. I mean, they've made that clear, right? I mean, so I think even if we saw a very calculated, calibrated, telegraph type of attack, just like what they did on the
Yeah, I
last
don't think
time, where
it.
they only
I
struck
don't think it
military
will be
targets.
telegraphed, but yeah, I
Right,
don't
right.
think
But
it
I'm
will be
just saying,
telegraphed. Yeah,
even if it
right,
was, I
right,
agree, it's not going to be.
yeah,
But even if it
no,
was,
right,
Israel's going to, turn on all the media machines to tell the U.S. to tell Fox News to blare it 24/7 how they're under attack by Iran and that they have to respond with disproportionate force. They've made that very
hmm
clear. So I think it doesn't. If they do a small attack on, if Iran executes a small attack on Israel in retaliation, then I think Israel will go ballistic. It will do launch a serious attack on Iran and on southern Lebanon. I mean, they're doing that already, but it'll be disproportionate by much further extreme. I don't think there'll be that much of a difference than if they do a larger attack, right? So I think the calculation is going to be that Iran probably realizes that it has to try to hit Israel pretty hard, not hit civilian structures, but
Hmm.
to hit as many of their military
Could
offensive
be.
capabilities, defensive capabilities, as hard
Right.
as they can quickly to disable them, because they know even if they just strike one outpost, one base, take it out,
Yeah.
Israel's going to
Right.
unleash whatever it can.
Right.
It'll be the same if they try to take them all out. So if I was Iran, if I'm making the calculation and they understand Israel very well, how Israel operates, they have to say, okay, if we're doing this, we got to do it right. And that's probably also why it requires more and more planning. Get all of your
Right.
ducks in a row, try to do this. So if I'm a betting man, I'm expecting quite a large response from Israel, and I mean from Iran, and this response from Iran, I think is going to be targeted. It will be targeting military targets only. It's very clear that's what Hezbollah and Iran do. They're not interested in targeting civilian targets. They realize how that would hurt them. On the global stage, the PR nightmare, and plus, they're just not the
Yeah. They're
morality of
not.
it. I think they
Yeah. They're
understand
not.
as well,
Right.
which
They're
which
not
Israel does not.
Yeah.
You know,
They're not homicidal
so
maniacs. Right.
yeah, that's what I think. They're not right,
Yeah.
right. They're not.
Yeah.
So,
Well,
but
right. I
they
don't know.
know
You might.
that
Yeah.
what
Yeah.
they
You may be
do,
right. I
they will
understand
strike
the
military
logic.
targets,
Right.
civilians. Right, right. Yeah, but I mean, it's just, I just people need to just look at it that way. Like let's take a look at the civilian deaths are what we need to minimize. These people are not party to the war. These are people like me and you trying to live their lives. They have families. They have jobs. They are not fighting. And look how many civilians have been killed in Lebanon, and in Syria, and of course in Gaza and the West Bank. And then look about the number of civilians that these so-called terrorists have killed. It's just if we had a chart, you would barely see what
Mm.
the axis of evil, all these terrorists, Iran, Yemen, the Houthis, Hezbollah, the Hamas, what they have done is it's minuscule in terms of death. And even when
Hmm.
Hezbollah, I think they've killed 7 civilians, and they owned up to it. They apologized and they offered to pay for the funerals and apologized profusely for this type of thing. And we'll see when Iran does this attack, and I know they're going to be quite as careful as they can be in terms of targeting military infrastructure. We're going to see Israel just level population centers. We'll see civilian deaths skyrocket, and that's horrific. And I just don't understand how anybody can continue to support a country that does this, that is so open to just killing women and children, innocent civilians. And there's just this problem of collective punishment, and that people just get blindsided in the
Hmm.
West. They just can easily demonize and dehumanize just a whole
Yeah.
group of people and say that
Yeah.
it's okay to just kill them. That's got to end. It's strange. We'll hear Stalin made that great quote. The death of one is a tragedy. The death of thousands or millions is a statistic. And I think that's the problem. We hear these human interest stories of people that have been
Hmm.
killed, and it's heart wrenching. But once you kill 10,000, 20,000, 30,000,
Hmm.
I don't know. Some
You
people can
get
just
yeah.
justify
Yeah.
it.
Right. Right.
Yeah, they
Right.
rationalize it.
Yeah.
But that it's just the horror. You got upset when you heard about that one person that was killed in the news,
Hmm.
and it was a horrific thing. But then when 100,000 get killed, you don't bat an eye.
Right.
It's crazy. That's the
Yeah.
reality we live in, though. Okay, Dad. Well, we just passed an hour, so I
Yeah.
think we can end
Right.
it here.
I think we need to end it. You're right. Okay.
Okay. All right. Well, have a good rest of your day. Okay. Bye bye.
Bye.